the concept of the inner ecosystem in that article really came, the nub of it was that sometimes I was going to see residents in their apartments and I realized that they had like news going on the television continuously around the clock, or at least during their waking hours. And I'm someone who doesn't have television. I haven't for many years, like for a decade. And so when I walk in and it's like, it's jarring and it's stimulating, and sometimes in a negative way, it can be upsetting because there's so much bad news out there right now. There's so much we've been through in the past year. So I started to realize, and I think some of you know this, I had my first career, I've had 3 careers. My first career was an engineer. And so I think of systems and I think of inputs and outputs. And we as human beings, we have all these different layers to us. We have all these different dimensions. And there's inputs, there's things that happen to us, things that we choose, things that we don't choose. There's environmental stimuli. There are relationships, the things that happen to the people that we care about. But when we expose ourselves to news for many hours a day, that's really shifting our neurochemistry. That's really shifting our well-being, and sometimes to our detriment. And so I was kind of in that piece wanting to encourage each of us to take responsibility for our own well-being and likening it to an ecosystem in the environment, which is really interconnected. And it's not just the dimensions of ourselves that are interconnected, but I look at all of us within this community at Vista and within each of your communities. We used to have much more porous boundaries. There were much more people coming in and visiting, family members hanging out, grandchildren coming, spending the night on the couch. And it was very different before COVID. And now we kind of look around and this is our world. It's who do we encounter when we go for a walk around this campus or a roll around this campus? This is our whole world. And there's a tremendous amount of interdependence that's kind of just been highlighted and made visible. And, I find from the residents that I interact with, we're so fortunate. We know we're going to be housed tonight. We know where our next meal is coming from. We can walk out the door and see a neighbor. What we need is meaning and purpose. And I've just been so impressed at all the ways that I've seen residents step up to the plate on that. And we have to work with a much more smaller palette of things that we have to draw on. But I've noticed that we have, since COVID started, we've had people start inviting if anyone can knit a 9-inch or 6-inch square or crochet a 6-inch square, they're going to make blankets after COVID is over to give to others. There are people who have made hundreds of quilts, and they used to get together with their fellow church members and do the quilting together. Now they have to do it apart, but they're still pumping out these quilts. We had someone who undertook collecting bottles that have CRV credit on them, and they're donating the money to the food bank. It goes on and on. I learned through one of these strength of community presentations that there is here at Vista a community garden that residents tend to, so that other residents can take flowers. Where are you going to get flowers if you're not leaving campus? Well, you can go to this community garden and pick flowers and bring them to another resident to cheer them up. And it goes on and on. We followed in Eliza's footsteps, and Craig Jones as well, in having a peer counseling program that got launched in the middle of COVID. When I see the way that residents look out for one another, they notice if someone hasn't brought in their mail, they notice if someone's meal is sitting outside the door, they alert us as staff. This is, the title of this talk is Strength of Community. This is community. It's people loving each other in these ways, and that's what makes this really a good place to be right now. And so when people are down and it is hard, there is anxiety and depression. I feel it, we all feel it. But I talk to the residents and say, how fortunate that you're right here, right now, not living alone in an apartment or a house, how isolated you would be. And how wonderful that you had the forethought to choose to live in a community like this. And here we are together getting through this and safely. It's really a wonderful thing. So I love being here. I adore our residents. They teach me things every single day. And I'm just in awe of how they take care of each other. That's what really makes this a community.